This is Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, broadcasting live from the Fixing America Command Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, here is your host, Steve Laffey.
Hey, good afternoon, America. Steve Laffey here with Steve Laffey's Fixing America. Hope we got a great show lined up for you today. We love doing yesterday's show. And tomorrow, we're talking about how to buy things in America, or at least not in China. How I do it, how we can do it. I think that'll be a fun show. And I have all these little tricks, and people who've gone shopping with me know all about it, and how I wear people out about it. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. Today, we're going to talk about the Internal Revenue Service. It's actually not in the news. You know why it's not in the news? Remember last summer, all the commotion? Yeah, Lois Lerner took the Fifth Amendment. She's now retired, ran the tax division about nonprofits, going after all the Tea Party people. And I knew a lady, know a lady, a very nice lady, one of the Tea Party ladies, spoken at one of her events, and she was still held up. She had to go to Washington, testify, and all this stuff. Remember, we were gonna finally do something, but we didn't. That's part of the show. I mean, it just builds up every once in a while. We think it's the only time it's ever happened. There's never been another scandal at the IRS, but this one is so big that we've got to do something about it, and we don't do anything about it. And then I've got to wait. I should have brought my tax. I have a box I keep of taxes, all the stuff I do for taxes. I mean, you do it too, right? So maybe I didn't bother to bring that. It's just giant, and it irritates me to no end about what we have to do to comply with taxes. So this show is about a lot of all these things that, first we can start with the problem. All these things that go on with our tax system. It is so inefficient. We know that. We know it's abusive. And we're going to talk about some of the big abuses, but these are the ones that make the paper over the years. Not the ones that happen every day to your friends. And the power of the IRS. And how rich people get called from Congress. They don't have to call Congress to lobby, they get called. And how, by the way, the marginal tax rates among lower income people are higher than the people who are really having the greatest year of all time. It goes on and on and on. But anyway, the history of the IRS, I guess we should cover first. Basically started around in the Civil War, where Lincoln put it in and they did away with it, and it came back around, the 1900s. And it really was a tax for the rich at that point. Then around 1944 with the war. It's always about these wars, by the way. That's why you got to be worried about the coming conflict that's going on between East and West that's growing because things changed dramatically during wars. And our tax system changed dramatically during World War II and became much more of a middle-class tax. And, of course, all the breaks that went with it. So, but look at some. I mean, people do think that this thing about Lois Lerner is like the only time it's happened. And everybody should have rallied up for that one. But it went away. And the reason it went away, and I don't know if it's going to come back to the next scandal, is because congressmen and senators and our president live off of it. And the wealthy, the truly wealthy, live off of it. The giant corporations and the wealthiest people in America, they're okay with this tax code. Otherwise, it would get changed. Because the way the systems that are in place, the way money gets into campaigns, it's all about the tax code. Almost all of these bills that you see pass, no matter what it is, they don't report about the things that are actually in the tax code. They don't report all the little special favors. I mean, when I was running for the Senate in 05 and 06, that was a year when the Bridge to Nowhere came up. And I was an Alaska senator, put the Bridge to Nowhere in, and people tried to stop it, and that one thing got stopped. Then earmarks were slowed down in Congress, as far as the hidden earmarks, but the tax changes that continue to happen over and over and over again, it never stops. In fact, we have so many good clips today that it was like clip heaven talking to Boss today. So I think we need to start off with some, or I'll never get to them. I'll never get to some of these clips. The first one, Boss, if we could play clip 6 and start with that. This is hedge fund managers talking about how the tax code works for them.
Morris Pearl is managing director of a leading New York investment firm. Are the wealthy gaming the system?
Yes.
Every day.
Yes. The wealthy have hugely more access to the legislators than the average American. I pick up my phone every day and get calls from members of Congress who want to talk to me, mainly because they want donations to their campaigns.
People would love to reach their congressperson. You have them calling you?
Unfortunately, yes.
All right, so there's a very typical story of a very wealthy investor. That's a CBS News clip, and it's about a year old, I guess, but it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It could have been a 20-year-old clip we could have played, right? There's a wealthy guy. You can't reach your congressman. You can't get him on the phone. When they come home last summer, your senator, you can't even meet with them. I mean, maybe you can, this particular one and so forth, but there's a general trend that they don't even meet with people. Yet they're calling wealthy people to say, what would you like to put in the tax code? And this guy's not responding, but most wealthy investors are responding like, yes, I need a tax depletion allowance. I need the oil companies need this. The home builders need that. You know, this is what they do, right? And they spend an awful lot of money on doing it. And of course, we've got one person working for us at the IRS. It looks like one person, is a taxpayer's representative or whatever the title is. It's her name is Nina Olson. Boss, let's play clip 7. Because that's Nina Olson, who is our tax
For someone
representative.
describing the tax code as a mess, people might be surprised to learn who your employer is.
The Internal Revenue Service.
The IRS.
Yes.
The complexity of the tax code is
Since
also
2001, Olson has been the national taxpayer advocate.
Congress has told me to be the voice of the taxpayer inside the IRS. It's pretty daunting.
What's most daunting? The sheer complexity of it all. The tax code is now 65 or 70,000 pages?
Yeah, it's very long.
You've been here for 10 years. The tax code has only gotten more complex.
Yes.
Is that frustrating?
Yes, and one could say I've failed.
But before you blame Nina Olson and the IRS, hold on. They don't make the rules. They just do what Congress tells them.
We looked at how many changes in the tax law had occurred. In last year alone, it was something like 579 changes.
579
changes in the tax law.
In 1 year? That's more than a change every day.
Yes.
How do you keep up?
I don't.
I don't, she says. So those phone calls going from congressmen to wealthy people result in 585 changes. Not all of them, obviously. Some are just giant changes, like the Obama tax laws and so forth. And we'll get into that. And they need 46 more laws because of just that one healthcare change of IRS regulations that they're going to go after people with. So here's a lady who responding to the first clip and almost directly saying, yeah, she's not saying this, but yeah, the wealthy people are getting called by Congress. Congressmen, they all changed the rules. Nobody can keep up, and I failed. Now, she's just one lady. I'm sure she's trying her best and so forth. And then you've got the situation, and again, this is the part that should make people insane, is that everybody thinks the tax code is progressive because they give you this one thing, and if you're a married couple making X, make Y, marry Z, and as your income goes up, then you pay a higher percentage. It's simply not true. Let's go to clip 8, which is David Johnson at Syracuse University. He'll tell you.
And all the data are overwhelmingly showing that for the last 30 years, money has been flowing upward. It's not trickle-down economics, it's Niagara up.
David K. Johnston is a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who teaches tax regulation at Syracuse University Law School.
If you're a single person making $500 a week, your total federal tax burden is significantly higher than someone who makes $1 million a day.
No.
Yes, you'll pay almost 22% of your income in income and payroll taxes, or you did in the year 2007. And that year, the 400 highest income taxpayers made $345 million on average, only paid by the same measure about 17 cents out of each dollar.
The reason, Johnston says, individual and corporate tax breaks, all stemming from the same source.
Political favor.
And that's it. So, in fact, when I played that and heard that for the first time, it's a number I'd used a couple of days ago before I heard this clip when I was talking to our producer here, Boss, about how vastly where the top people pay about 17%. It seems like they pay 17%, whether the marginal tax rate was 70% before Reagan came around, whether they were 77% back in the 50s, whether they were after the Reagan Revolution, let's call it, and they were the 28%. It seems as though the wealthiest people, the number 17 always comes up. It's a lucky number, I guess. But you look at the marginal tax rates of people who are in low incomes, for them to go make an extra dollar, many times it's 50 or 60, much lower. In fact, one of my friends, economist Larry Kotlikov, spent a year back in 05, 06 on this project. And here are some of the numbers. It'll shock you. We actually have a massive distortion in total marginal rates by how old you are, by how much you make. For example, 30-year-old couple, 2 children making $30,000 a year are actually at the poverty line. But the marginal rate for them to go make another dollar is 42%, a lot more than 17, because of the earned income tax credit gets phased out. The clawback on that, about 20 cents on each dollar. The same couple that year, if they made $50,000, were at a 24% marginal rate because that thing had been phased out, not 42. At $150,000, it was 44%. If they had made $10,000, it actually would have been negative. They would have been given money. It would have had negative 14%. It would have been so think of the different incomes. It wasn't a higher marginal rate as income went up. In some cases, it's lower. And by the way, he quotes if these people were 60 years old, their marginal rates would change again. At $30,000, it'd be 36%, not the 42% I quoted you. So we have in our tax code such inequality. I mean, it's not fair for people. And if you look at what it really does, all the stuff that we have in our tax code, it just punishes savers. Our national savings rate has continued to decline year after year. It's been a situation that we wonder why we don't save. Well, we basically tax savings. In fact, we actually tax savings. So not only is Ben Bernanke and now Janet Yellen, they're taking it back so you can't save, but whatever you save and earn interest on to create new wealth, even if you're not realizing you're doing it, you might just have money at a bank, we're taxing that. And so it's a terrible situation. We have a situation where the massive amounts of abuse, and we talked about Lois Lerner a little bit, but it's everywhere. I have friends who have been attacked by the IRS. If you don't know this, this is the IRS collection procedures, sort of a manual. I got it from one of the law firms and tax practitioners, but it's the same everywhere. You may not know this, but some of my friends know it. The IRS, they're supposed to send you like 3 notices if you have a disagreement. They really only have to give you 10 days, though. So if you've got someone, and this has happened throughout history, who's behind in getting money out of people, they may just target you. They can come in and just seize your stuff. I guess they can't seize some of your underwear. I mean, literally, seriously, there's certain things they can't levy. Some of your belongings, some of your clothing and so forth, but they can seize your place. They don't need to go to the proper channels that we all understand here in America. They don't have to. They don't have to go to the regular judges. They just come in and start seizing things. Then you have to fight back. And by the way, there's been many people who have told me, and maybe this is going to happen to me now after doing this show, but who have taken on the IRS, whether it's been as someone running for office or someone with just a civics group, and they've been targeted by the IRS. In fact, if you look throughout history, and we have to take a break. Maybe we'll do it after the break. But if you look throughout history, I mean, there's been massive Look at Nixon, by the way. One of the reasons he was impeached was his targeting of political opponents. The power of the IRS is too large. It's huge. Now we've got to find a way to change it. We'll come back and talk about that in a second. It's Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. I'm sorry, LaffeyRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter, Laffey Radio. Like us on Facebook, Laffey Radio. We'll take a quick break, get back, and we'll start getting to some of the solutions we're going to have to, and why we haven't gotten to some of the solutions. Be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
The call to serve. It has no sound, yet I have heard it in the whispered retelling of honorable sacrifices made by those who have served before me. The call to serve has no form, yet I have clearly seen it in the eyes of men and women infinitely more courageous and more driven than most. The call to serve has no weight, yet I have held it in my hands. I will commit to carry it close to my heart until my country is safe and the anguish of those less fortunate has been soothed. The call to serve is at once invisible and always present. And for those who choose to answer the call, for their country, for their fellow man, for themselves, it is the most powerful force on earth. America's Navy, a global force for good.
There's hundreds of fun and simple things you and your family can do to live a healthier lifestyle. Here's 20 of them. Eat less, eat slower, eat smarter, eat your fruits and veggies. Stop eating before you're full. Up your fiber, lower your calories, get off the bus early, do some gardening, do jumping jacks, take the stairs, take one, not two, take on a new sport, take a long walk home, walk instead of drive, bend, stretch, reach for the stars, climb the monkey bars, skip the fudge bars. Search We Can online to find more ways you and your family can get healthy together. A message from the Ad Council, HHS, and NIH's We Can program.
I'll pick you up after school. Okay, I got it.
It's easy to take a day for granted. You and your family are connected by routine, and you stick to it. But what if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if your day's routine is disrupted and you can't reach your family? Have you planned for that? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today. Learn how at www.ready.gov. Ready.gov. This message brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Ad Council.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
Mr. Speaker, all Americans are aware how our current tax code is too complex and punishes people who save, invest, and achieve economic success. However, the recent news coming from the IRS illustrates another pressing reason for tax reform. Our current tax code puts too much power and potential for abuse into the hands of unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats. The American people deserve a tax system that cannot be a political weapon to be used against them. That is why I'm a proud co-sponsor of the fair tax. The fair tax would eliminate the IRS by replacing the current tax code with a simple consumption-based tax. The fair tax would be collected equally from all Americans with no opportunity for the government to attack or discriminate against innocent citizens.
Attack or discriminate against innocent citizens, says Representative Billy Long out of, I think, Missouri. That was this summer. And one of the things I think about when I think about Representative Billy Long and others like him, there are some, that if he's truly for a fair tax, and I love the fair tax, don't get me wrong, we'll talk about that, we'll talk about it right now. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're at LaffeyRadio.com, and we've got new clips out there every day, Laffey Minute. So watch them, and it's what you're probably thinking today or yesterday, and send them to your friends. It's a good way to get them to tune into this show, because we're doing high-level, this is not a show we're just sitting here bashing everybody and laughing and joking about how terrible things are. We're trying to provide solutions. It's a unique show. There ain't anyone like this one out there, I don't think. We can't find it. And whether or not the America takes off, we up to whether Americans want solutions, because we're going to provide them. We're providing them right now. We're going through this whole tax code and its long history of scandal. In fact, it's best that people know. I mentioned this early in the clip, but do people know that the IRS went after Martin Luther King? They did. They know that Nixon was partially impeached over it. He was. It's part of the. Here's what Nixon did, by the way. This is why they couldn't get rid of the IRS then. White House tapes recorded Nixon urging aide Eric Edelman in 1971 to get the IRS to dig into the tax returns of possible Democratic presidential candidates Muskie, Humphrey, and Kennedy. He quotes, "There's a lot of gold in them dar hills." I mean, it's one of the reasons he was charged in the articles of impeachment were, one of them said seeking confidential information containing income tax returns for purposes not authorized by law. It goes on and on. It's been going on for a long time. We always think it's only now, and it's only them. and it's only a small amount of the population, but it's not. It's actually a lot of people. There's a lot of people and by the way, you probably met some of these people, and I have, where they were somehow targeted by the IRS. They didn't get back to them quick enough. And it ballooned out of control, which is why they run these commercials. If you own over $10,000 to the IRS, call us. And I would bet that these people are ex-IRS agents, and the reason you call them is that they got some political grease with the IRS because they worked there for 30 years. My original tax guy, because I couldn't do my taxes when I was very young. I guess I could. It took so much time. I went to H&R Block. And H&R Block was a great old guy. In fact, he did him when I moved to Memphis. He did him from Memphis because he was so good. He was a really nice guy. Not everybody at the IRS is a bad person. In fact, most are probably great. But there's some bad apples everywhere. And the bad apples have a lot of power at the IRS. One thing to be a bad apple parking a car around the corner here, and they may scratch it up and not tell you. Okay. It's another thing to come after your home, seize your assets, take your boat when they have no right to do so. And that's the IRS today. That's what they can do, and that's what they do. So this fair tax situation is something that's been around for a long time. And one of the things I want to get across in this show, and that one of the problems we have, is that there are alternative plans. And I'm okay with almost any of them. I'm mostly a fair tax guy. I mean, I think that's better than a flat tax. Steve Forbes is in my movie, Fixing America, the movie, and he talks about it, and that's fine. I'd go with that. But I always look at the flat tax as we really don't get rid of the IRS. And there's always a bunch of exemptions. They always have a bunch of exemptions, and everybody's got different exemptions. So we start talking about all the exemptions again, the home exemption, the earned income tax exemption, and so forth. Whereas what we really need is a tax system that we don't have to worry about that, and we focus on taking care of the poor people. The people who are having a terrible year, need to feed their family and so forth. Then what do we need to do about them? And the fair tax does that very well. And so to go through the fair tax, and this is really the fair tax plan, is that they want to take and tax 23% of whatever you buy. They want to make sure everybody pays, and they want to collect a lot of and I think that they would. I think a fair tax would collect a lot of the underground economy. How big is the underground economy in America? It's giant. It's huge. I mean, in fact, I got something here. It's about $2 billion. No, I'm sorry, where is it right here? I got it right here. $2 trillion. Oh, see, I keep going back to billions and trillions. It's $2 trillion underground economy. This is the AP article from just a little while ago, back in April. And that's $500 billion in net taxes to all of us. And, this is illegal aliens, prostitutes, small companies that keep a lot of cash. They use cash businesses. We deal with them. You think those people are reporting all their taxes? No, nobody is. Many of these people don't even exist. With this recession we've had, many people are working under the counter and taking cash and not reporting any of it. So there's 500. Well, with people like that, they go buy stuff. They might prostitutes buy a car. And, we've actually given out, by the way, in tax breaks last year over $4 billion. I think it was $5.2 billion to illegal aliens. That's how badly run it is. So a fair tax does away with a lot of that, and then there really isn't an income tax anymore. We got to repeal the income tax because some people think, you don't want to have both of these things because that income tax will come back, and that's a problem with some of these other plans. So the fair tax, by the way, the thing that Democrats have never gotten about the fair tax, and I'll say this, I guess no one knows this. I mean, some people, Larry Kotlikov knows this, my friend at Boston University. It's really a tax on wealth. It's an immediate tax on wealth, the fair tax. They don't advertise it that way. But if you've got $1 billion and you're a billionaire and they start taxing every purchase at 23%, effectively it's reduced your purchasing power by not exactly 23%, by 1 minus 23%. It's like probably 16, 17%. So all of a sudden you got like $840 million effectively. And that's just really what the fair tax does, right or wrong. All wealthy people will take a bigger hit than poor people under a fair tax. And what they do with the fair tax is make sure they send out what they call a prebate or a demo grant or just some money to make sure that people who aren't making anything are still in the system and still able to go buy things. And then that's going to be a whole problem too. But at least it gets us, and I talk a lot about on these shows, at least it gets us to talking about the thing we should talk about in the government, domestically. How do we take care of the people who can't take care of themselves? Not how do we get homeowners into homes. A lot of people want to rent. Our tax system benefits homeowners. There's many people I know who don't want to own a home. And looking back on all the homes I've owned, some of them sometimes I would have rather have rented. I'll let someone else take care of the problem because I haven't stayed in one place for 30 years. And luckily I've been able to do well getting in and out of homes and so forth. And I had a very small home when the recession hit and get out of a second home just before it hit. And so forth. So I do. But for me, it's an investment. But as far as this whole thing about everybody's got to own a home, listen, it's great when people do in communities, and people will. They do want to own a home, but not everybody. But our tax code's always about, they talk about that home deduction. Every flat tax discussion always keeps in several deductions. And I always think of the flat tax as like, oh, it's going to start all over again, which is, by the way, good. If we can get it down to start all over again, because what you have to do, and I'll do this right here. Sometimes I like to do this randomly for everybody. This is one of the reasons we absolutely need a new tax system. If you just go to your computer, I used to carry the large taxes system with me. But if you just go around and say to yourself, I'm just going to randomly pick up a piece of the tax code and start reading. All right, here I am. Tax 214. All right, that one was repealed. Effective date of repeal. Tax 317. Statute, property. For purposes of this part, the term property means money, securities, and any other property except that such term does not include stock in the corporation making the distribution or rights to acquire such stock. B, redemption of stock. Have you fallen asleep yet? Do you understand where I'm going? We can go read any part of this tax code. I'm a Harvard Business School graduate. Here's Section 512. Unrelated business taxable income. Definition, for the purposes of this title. 1, general rule. 2, special rule for foreign organizations. In case of an organization described in Section 511, which is a foreign organization, blah, blah, blah. Section 3B, exempt function income. This goes on. This is page after page. In fact, I think it's about 70, 80,000 pages. It's 4 million words. Here's Section 812. Definition of a company's share of policy share. I won't go any farther. Section 2, policy interest. For purposes of this subsection, the term policy interest means, and it has A, B, C, and D of what policy interest means. That's our tax code. Nobody understands it. Nobody gets it. We spend 6 billion hours, and that's what kills me, because I get an accountant to do it, my taxes. And one, I get it because I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want the IRS showing up and saying, hey, you made a mistake, and at least I can have a competent, and I get really good accountants. But I have the means to do so. Most people don't. I used to do TurboTax early on when they first came out with it. It was actually pretty efficient. Then I got involved in some other investments to take advantage of the tax code, which I do. Take advantage, legally pay the least amount. It's a thing I never understood about Mitt Romney. I never understood why he wouldn't just level with people and say, listen, I leveraged everything up, I took advantage of the tax code, put super duper leverage stuff into my 401k IRA. It's worth $100 million. He had like $100 million 401k. Can you imagine what he put in there? Options on options on options of highly leveraged investments. But he won. All right, God bless him. He won. And just tell people the tax code says I pay X. I paid X. And he should have put up a sign of how much he paid, an awful lot. The guy made an awful lot of money over the last number of years. And he should have put up exactly how much he paid versus every member of Congress or the president and said, look how many tanks I bought for America. Look how much welfare I bought, how much welfare payments I made. He wasn't willing to do so. But everybody does it. We all do it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's one of those situations where we've just got to. We've got to get to some solutions. Well, the fair tax, and we've gone through it, is a pretty good solution. I think it's a good one. Let's come back and talk about the flat tax and keep going through solutions till we can get to what we think is the best one. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Students, when I call the reason for your absences throughout the years, please exit the auditorium without your high school diploma. Too tired, family trip, sick day, starting the holidays early.
Starting in the 6th grade, students who miss 18 days or more of school in a year for any reason will fall behind and risk not graduating high school. How many days of school has your child missed this year? Absences add up. Keep track at boostattendance.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
What? What about our plan to win the lottery and start living? You know, travel the world on matching yachts, wear enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacation on the French Riviera, and then buy it.
You know we're never going to win the lottery, right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs, the Colorado Society of CPAs, and the Ad Council.
Picture this, your next trip, Utah, 5 national parks. First, Zion. You're walking, the ground rises, the ground drops, the ground becomes water. Next, Bryce. You're riding a mule. You're riding a mule under giant orange drip castles. You are not dreaming. You will not forget this. On to Capitol Reef. Take the scenic route, the really scenic route. Take a path you've never taken and see the stars for the first time. Now for Canyonlands. You're riding a bike. You're riding a bike on Mars. Now you're riding the rapids. Class 2, Class 3, Class 4, Classic. Arches, 5:32 a.m. Some things are worth racing the sunrise for. The horizon lightens. You round the corner. Whoa. This is Life Elevated. The Mighty 5 iconic parks, one epic experience. Plan your trip at visitutah.com.
It's 6:42 p.m. Time for Steve Plotto and his son Dylan to do the dishes. They talk about everything from the yuckiness of girls to the awesomeness of his soccer team. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Then, hey! The dreaded splash fight. It's Dad o'clock, and it's the best time of the day. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
Well, I've been promoting for a while now, and it's going to be a big plank of what I do as I go forward is promoting a flat tax. I promote a 17% flat tax like Steve Forbes did. Very few, if any, deductions. Same for individuals, same for corporate. This would make us competitive worldwide. We'd make it simple enough. And really what you'd have is you'd have an attrition, if not an outright elimination of the IRS, because it would be so simple that people would comply, and it'd be very simple to know whether they complied or not.
Well, you've been one of the individuals who has been outspoken on those issues. Whether or not there's the traction and the momentum for it in Washington, I know is something that you personally would like to see and battle for. So we'll see.
That's Senator Rand Paul from the great state of Kentucky talking about the flat tax. So he's a flat tax guy. And much like Steve Forbes, as he says, it's great. I mean, the flat tax is, like I said, we get out of this program, get out of this IRS program. The flat tax won't get us out of it. There'll still be an IRS. I mean, you got to send in a form, even though hopefully you can put it on one piece of paper. And as you saw, there was a little nuance there in that comment. He was talking about some or few deductions, if any deductions, and so forth. What I have found with the flat tax, and this gets at the beginning of the real problem, that we as Americans, we want a new tax system. But we're divided. There's these fair tax people, and they are rabid fair tax people. Great people, many of them. They got congressmen who are fair tax people that we just heard from Billy Long. You've got the flat tax people, and that's Steve Forbes, who really has been talking about it ever since the beginning of time, since he's been around. And God bless him for it. You know, he's been, but none of it's happened. But since we have the fair tax people and the flat tax people, and we got things about the fair tax that we know we can't get through Congress, and we got things about the flat tax it's going to be hard to get through Congress. And why is it going to be hard? Well, I mean, look at all the power these people have to give up. I mean, here, for example, the lobbying power of these giant corporations. We played a clip early about it. But here's General Electric. General Electric, one of the biggest companies in the world. Profits from 2008, 2010, $10 billion. Taxes paid, negative $4 billion. Lobbying efforts, $84 million. They don't want to change things. They made $10 billion in profits and didn't pay any taxes. Here's PG&E, big utility, over those 3 years. This comes from Herman Cain's book, 999, An Army of Davids. Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Mr. Cain. PG&E, $4.8 billion in profits over 3 years, negative $1 billion in taxes, got refunds, $78 million in lobbying. The list goes on and on. I mean, how much money is spent in lobbying? And by the way, lobbying, here's Federal Express, $4.2 billion in profits, $37 million in taxes. We're going to talk about, we don't need to even have corporate taxes probably if we go with the fair tax. But their lobbying efforts, and you see how much money they make, and then you see how seemingly little, $90 million in lobbying efforts, but $90 million in lobbying efforts over 3 years is $30 million a year. They get a giant bang for the buck. Not like me and you. Not like the regular people of America. You get no bang for the buck. You've got a marginal tax that can be higher or lower. That doesn't depend on your income sometimes. And then we've got to analyze exactly how much power they have. I mean, look what happened last summer with Lois Lerner, who's now retired, I guess. But let's play clip one, and let's talk about Lois Lerner for a second, if you would, boss.
Byron, first of all, where are these emails from? Who got them?
Well, the House committee that's investigating this has them. They've given out some of them to the press. We don't know if they're all of them. But what they show is communications between Lois Lerner and other people at the IRS. Remember, the original story was this wasn't people in Washington who did this targeting of conservative groups. It was these rogue employees in Cincinnati. And clearly, by these emails, she was involved in it. And not only was she involved in it, there were some cases involving Tea Party organizations that she thought were so sensitive that the people in Cincinnati should not be told about it. So not only was it not people in Cincinnati, but people in Washington were keeping Cincinnati in the dark about it.
One of her emails says, makes reference to the Tea Party, says the Tea Party matter is, quote, very dangerous. And it strikes me as, here's a woman who works at the IRS with an enormous amount of power, and people terrified of the IRS, and she's calling the Tea Party dangerous, and she's not reflecting on her own conduct as being profoundly dangerous.
Exactly. And
yeah, profoundly dangerous was her own contact. That was from Fox News. And she's calling the Tea Party dangerous. So we know we've got to get out of this system. And we know that it's a giant fight. Because, first of all, most congressmen don't want to do it. That's where they get their money from. So we've got a situation where we need a president to do it. And so we talked about the fair tax and the flat tax, and along came in 2011 Herman Cain. And he came in with his 999 plan. And everybody remembers it because it's so simple, 999. 9% on a business flat tax, 9% on an individual flat tax, and 9% as a national sales tax fair tax. So he sort of split the baby there, right? He sort of just took a little bit from both, and that's why he did it, by the way. And we have a clip from Herman Cain. Herman Cain kind of mashup. I think it's clip 3. Let's play Herman Cain before we talk about it.
People are resonating with my ideas. I just don't give generic responses to what we need to do about the economy.
One of the most striking moments, when they panned out to the crowd and asked them about the 999 tax, not a single person raised their hand in support. And I wonder if that's because, people look at this 9-cent sales tax, they're going to spend another 9 cents every time they spend $1. That's going to be a huge hit to Americans who are hurting right now, isn't it?
No, George. The reason people didn't raise their hands is because it's 999.
When you take the 999 plan and you turn it upside down, I think the devil's in the details.
I just don't give generic responses to what we need to do about the economy. 999.
999. 999.
And I love I don't know if that clip was like an old 45 that was on replay, but the 999 took off, and Herman Cain took off over the 999 at a speech he gave in Florida, I think in September. of 2011, it was like wildfire. Because finally the American people had something they could grasp onto, and a guy that could actually explain it. That's George Stephanopoulos, who interviewed me one time in Rhode Island for his show. And nice man, actually was really well versed. But the question he asked Herman, people don't want to pay. He's talking about, by the way, all the other people running for president were like, no, don't want anything to do with 999. They're not into that. They had their own plan or no plan, and they're getting the money from corporations. They don't really want it to be simplified. So Herman Cain, they had to go out and take out Herman Cain, I guess. That was the plan, I guess. The man was actually gaining traction over something so simple on one issue that the people loved. Everybody knew about 999. And everybody was for 999, it seemed like. The people were. And then he had to drop out of the race. And I actually want to tell you, he came to Colorado, and I was lucky enough to have dinner with him. And he's a very impressive guy. And he told me, and it's actually in his book, and I want to go over this a little bit, but he basically did come up with his thought process. How do you take the flat tax people and the fair tax people and get them to kind of agree on something? Because then we can actually unite over something. So that's what 999 was really all about. In the name, he writes in his book, in the name of uniting the country, uniting all businesses under the same code, uniting all individual taxpayers under the same code, blah, blah, blah. After all, it's a combination of the flat tax and the fair tax. And that's what he came up with. In fact, he told me a funny story where the real inventor of it, Rich Lowry, was a guy in Cleveland. I've talked to him too, great guy. Really dead set on getting this 999 passed. He said it came up to be, Herman told me, it came up to be 9.37. And Herman's like, 9.37, I make it up, 9.37, just make it 999. And so Mr. Cain understands the simplicity of a message to the American people. It's just a darn shame we just didn't take it to another level, that someone else didn't pick up on it in some way, shape, or form. So the problem, of course, with the 999, and what Herman has tried to do, and I know he's done it through his radio show, he says this thing called pickaplan.org. And pickaplan.org is just simply choose among those three. You know, which one do you want? And then try to get the fair tax people and try to get the flat tax people to say, listen, the 999 plan won, or the flat tax one, or the fair tax one. But let's pick one, because we can't just argue among ourselves. All the people who know the tax code has to be changed, we got to grab a hold of one of them, which is why I like the 999 plan, because one of the things you could do with the 999 plan, I think it's actually Mr. Cain's intention, I really do, is that you can take, you could turn it into a fair tax over time. You could start with 9 on the income tax and make it 8, and then make it 7, and increase the fair tax side. Take the corporate tax down too, and increase the fair tax side over time, so we can just get rid of the other taxes. Because we all know the corporate income tax is paid for by the consumers. There's no people there. And so no one wants to admit it. The Democrats will scream about it. If they catch me saying it, they'll scream about it when I said it. But if we took the corporate income tax down to 0 eventually, but even down to 9, we become very competitive. But the nice thing about all these plans is that you really have no tax on savings. And I want to drill home on that for a second before this next break. We got to take one right now, I guess, the last break. I'm going to come back with another plan. But we got to take away any of these impediments for saving. Our country doesn't save enough. We got to reward the savers. That's why taking interest rates to 0 and buying bonds with the Federal Reserve is a terrible policy. So all three of these plans basically take savings, the impediment to savings to 0. They reward savers. And that's what we got to do in this country to make it grow again, to really make it grow. Anyway, Steve Laffey. Check us out on Facebook at Laffey Radio. We're LaffeyRadio.com. We've got all kinds of clips. We put up a new Fixing America Presents yesterday. We've got a Laffey Minute up there right now. The Laffey Buzz is coming up. The website's being populated at Laffey Radio. Check that out, and we'll be right back with the last episode.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m., I shower. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m., I shower. I start laundry at 8. At 10, we go for a walk. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers for advice, tips, and support. Together, let's help each other better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better, and kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor, because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
But to help our companies compete, we also have to knock down barriers that stand in the way of their success. For example, over the years, a parade of lobbyists has rigged the tax code to benefit particular companies and industries. Those with accountants or lawyers to work the system can end up paying no taxes at all. But all the rest are hit with one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world. It makes no sense. It has to change.
It makes no sense, he says. That's President Obama to all the congressmen and senators at the State of the Union address. It has to change. He says the lobbyists have rigged the tax code. No, Mr. President. The people clapping in the audience rigged the tax code. The lobbyists actually don't vote. They just give hundreds of millions of dollars to the people to get their vote. But the guys who and the ladies who rigged the tax code, that's actually the senators and congressmen. And you. So he wanted to clear the field. Things have to change. It made no sense. And by the way, I just heard the president speak today. This is him apologizing for the disaster caused by Obamacare, one of the many disasters to come. And one of the unbelievable things about the clip, that if we had a different show, was he just kept saying he talked to a lot of folks. He talks to a lot of folks. He calls them folks every day. But he described folks as business leaders, lobbyists, congressmen, senators. He doesn't describe folks as you, Plumber Joe. He doesn't see any of those people. Otherwise, he never would have canceled the people's plans. It's amazing. But anyway, back to he makes a speech and people are clapping about simplifying the tax code. And guess what they do? There are now 46 new responsibilities assigned to the IRS. We've gone over their power. It's too immense. Under the health care law. Here's what they are. I can't go through all 46. But remember we said that there are 585 changes to the tax code every year, more than one per day. Here's a 46 additional for one law. They got a new charitable hospital tax. They impose additional reporting requirements for charitable hospitals to qualify as tax exempt under IRS 501c3 and require hospitals to conduct a community health needs assessment at least once every 3 years and to adopt a financial assistance policy and policy relating to emergency medical care. That's just one. I can't read 46. We'll all fall off the back of our chairs with boredom. But they have a medicine cabinet tax. It repeals the tax exclusion for over-the-counter medicines under a health flexible spending arrangement, also known as FSA for all the people out there who talk in that language, and the health reimbursement arrangement, also known as HRA, health savings accounts, Archer medical savings, unless the medicine is prescribed by a physician. It goes surtax on investment income, hike in medical payroll taxes, high medical bill taxes, flexible spending account caps, retiree prescription drug coverage taxes, early retiree subsidies are put in, state exchange tax credits. What the heck is that about? Provides premium assistance refundable tax credits for applicable taxpayers who purchase insurance through a state exchange. Oh my gosh. More collecting information, state exchange information reporting. They got laws about taxpayer information disclosure that are changing. Is there any wonder why Washington's getting bigger and more profitable? And housing prices are going up? And 4 of the top 5 zip codes are not in Silicon Valley anymore. They're not even in Greenwich, Connecticut, around Wall Street. They're in Washington, D.C. That's where the money is. That's where your money is. But for Barack Obama to say he's going to do away with it and they're all clapping means it's all a game. It's a total game. And Herman Cain knew that. He knew it was a game. That's why he came up with the 999 plan. It took off like wildfire on the speech he gave when no one else showed up in September. And it was unfortunate that he had to stop his campaign. Then, by the way, we got a fourth plan. And I wanted to get into this one because before it became a book, I actually talked to the author. This is Professor of Economics Larry Kotlikoff. He's in my movie. He has these purple tax plans. Not all I agree with, but I wanted to go over this one. This one has a 10-point plan. It's sort of hear me out on this. Remember the fair tax is about 23%. He replaces the federal, personal, and corporate income taxes with a 17.5% retail tax, fair tax, let's call it. It's a tax on all consumption purchases plus consumption services from homes, boats, planes, cars, other major durables. So far, we've got two Republican points, right? Republicans should like both of those points. Conservatives, let's call them. He taxes annual consumption purchased abroad above $5,000. Okay, a minor point. That's another Republican thing. He provides an option to pay the consumption tax up front on wages and health because it really is a wealth tax. They tax inheritances, but they eliminate the estate and gift tax. He just didn't taxes now the people that that get it at 15%, which is actually much better than what's going on. By the way, think about that. To stop for a second, this is estate tax. Do people realize that it went from like 55% down to 0 and back to 55% over a course of a couple of years because George Bush put it in temporarily? And there was a year when it was 0. So if you died in that year with $1 billion, $100 million, $10 million, or your family farm worth $10 million, that there was no estate tax? And then on December 31st of one year, it was going to go back to 55 over a certain amount of estate worth. Maybe it was $5 billion. I mean, I don't remember the stories where people were getting killed or people taking suicide pills to help their families. But someone probably got killed over it. But that was insanity. The lack of certainty over taxes and why they keep changing and how they keep changing is affecting economic growth in America by a great amount. And it has to change. So he has more plans in here, by the way. There's 10 of them. And I wanted to go through these things because it's important. He also does this demo grant, he calls it, but basically pay people who are poor some money every year to make sure that they've got enough money and so forth. So it's focusing on the poor, very Democrat type plan. Exempts the first $40,000 of earnings from the employee portion of the FICA. The FICA stays, by the way, because he makes this fair tax 17%. So he keeps the FICA in, but he makes it now progressive. He takes the caps off, which the Democrats love because it goes to $113,000 right now and then stops. So he would change that and it would still be that tax. So it's not perfect, but there's a lot of things in here. By the way, it's another wealth tax. And he has an estate tax. There's a lot of things here that Democrats would like. He adds into the fair tax, a true fair tax, some things that Democrats would be for. And I think ultimately would be something that we could all get closer to voting on. I think this is a plan, call it the Purple Tax, purpletaxplan.org, I think he has it at. But call it Purple Tax. You can look at some of his other plans. We've talked about Social Security. And those are two plans that I actually rather like. But I think the most important thing to leave people with, as we're going to close up the show in a couple of minutes, and I got to get this out, is one, we've gone through how corrupt it is. In fact, we've got one more clip about this. Clip 2. Boss, could you play clip 2 with Neil Cavuto, please? We might not have clip 2. That's okay. That's Neil Cavuto, IRS.
That waiting for something to do. Maybe just. Well, this just in, the IRS scandal might be putting this whole healthcare law on life support. That's because the IRS was supposed to be administering much of the plan and policing the funds for that plan. Thousands of agents already hired to do just that, waiting for something to do. Maybe just up in smoke. Charles Payne says he can only hope. But can you imagine the IRS now handling our health care?
It's, well, listen, it is what it is. I mean, we're talking about reports of up to 17,000 new agents.
Right. What's their job supposed to be?
You know, that's just it. It feels like it feels pretty vague. I mean, we've got navigators who are going to go around and explain the healthcare system and, you know, how to sign up for things. Oh, and by the way, help you register to vote while they're at it. But these agents, and Neil, here's the thing. I can't think of any agency. I mean, we talk about the czars, we talk about the EPA. There's nothing in D.C., nothing in the federal government as fear that people fear. I don't care who you are, what your religion is, what your political affiliation is. When you hear IRS agent on the phone, or you get a letter,
that letter, right?
The intimidation. I mean, we're talking about Zeus right now. This is and this is what maybe small businesses are going to have to deal with, individuals are going to have to deal with as we implement the healthcare law. And it feels like there could be an incredible intimidation factor.
And that's Neil Cavuto and his guest, and they're talking about. By the way, my bad. The clip was playing. Sorry. There's nothing worse than getting a call from the IRS on the phone, and the intimidation factor of people who live on this intimidation, who spend 6 billion hours a year, our country, doing their taxes, and so we know we got to get to another tax plan, and we know that the solution's only going to come from the top. It's only going to come from a president who barnstorms around the country with either a flat tax, a fair tax, the 999, the purple tax plan, something else in between that actually does away for the most part with the IRS and limits their power and promotes savings in our country, which all of them do, and promotes jobs coming back into the country, which basically all of them do. That's what we need. The only solution, though, is that we, the people who want something changed, we have to do something like Herman Cain has just been doing. That's the pickataxplan.org. He's got like 16,000 people voting on it, but we need like 1 million people to vote on it. We need to barnstorm the country, and somebody needs to do that and barnstorm the country, and someone needs to run for president on this issue because people love it. They know, but they're so busy. They don't have time. This is the thing that people run out of. They expect their elected officials, going back to Fixing America, the movie where one guy says, we just want them to do their freaking job we put them in there to do. That's Jeff in Kentucky. And that's what we do, but they don't. And we're never going to get it from the Congress, the senators and the House of Representatives. They're in on the gig. They're all clapping. We have clips of them clapping as the president says, we're going to make it simpler. And we're not going to make it simpler. Anyway, well, it looks like we're out of time. It's Steve Laffey. We're going to have to unite on one program. And if it's not my favorite program, fine. I'll just take the second best one and go with it. But to unite on it, it's got to come from the top down. Thank you for listening. It's Steve Laffey's Fixing America. Check us out tomorrow. We'll be on again at LaffeyRadio.com. We're on Facebook. Lots of people are liking it. We'll be back tomorrow with another show. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you so much.
You've You've been listening to Steve Laffey's Fixing America radio program on the Laffey Radio Network. Fixing America is broadcast Monday through Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. right here at www.laffeyradio.com. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this broadcast without the express written consent of Laffey Network LLC is prohibited.